Our story today is called Wanda's Roses by Pat Brisson, illustrated by Marianne Kaka-Leffler. Wanda's Roses. I like this dedication. It says, for Elvira, who loves roses, and for everyone who believes in a dream. One morning in May, on the way to school, Wanda noticed a bush growing in the empty corner lot at Fillmore and Hudson Streets. It must have been growing for a while because it was about 2 feet tall, and Wanda was surprised she hadn't noticed it before. But there it was, bare and thorny, and Wanda, who loved beautiful things, felt her heart beat faster. There she found it. She sees this bush, right? And all of a sudden her heart beats faster after seeing that bush. What does she think is going to happen? What does she think is going to happen to that bush? Now I notice when I look around this empty lot, there's lots of just junk all over. Except, of course, this bush that she has found. Oh, a rose bush, she said to herself, my very own rose bush. Now, the rose bush didn't really belong to Wanda, but since nobody seemed to own the lot or the heaps of junk that were piled there, she decided she would care for this bush and make it her own. All during school, she thought about her rose bush. During art, she drew pictures of what it would look like in full bloom. During library, she borrowed books on arranging flowers. During science, she asked so many questions about how to take care of it that finally her teacher said she really must stop asking questions about roses and start thinking about electricity, which was what the lesson was about. After school, she rushed to the rose bush, and it was still bare and thorny. Maybe it needs more sun, thought Wanda, so she put down her school bag and began digging some of the nearby trash out to the curb. Mrs. Turner, who was on her way to the store, stopped to help her with a broken chair. Oh, I'm not just cleaning, Wanda told her. I am helping my rose bush to get more sun so it will bloom. Your rose bush? Mrs. Turner asked. Where is your rose bush? Over there, said Wanda, pointing proudly to the bare, thorny bush. Oh, Wanda, I'm not so sure that's a rose bush, Mrs. Turner said gently. Sure it is, said Wanda. I've seen rose bushes in books, and this is what they look like before they bloom. You just wait. In a few weeks, this lot will be full of roses. Well, said Mrs. Turner, shaking her head, good luck with it, Wanda. And as she walked away, Mrs. Turner thought to herself, if that's a rose bush, then I'm the Queen of England. What do you think that means, that I'm the Queen of England? Do you think it means that's never going to happen? Like only in her dreams would this rose bush happen? Only in her dreams would she become the Queen of England? The next day after school, Wanda hurried to the rose bush. It was still bare and thorny. Maybe it needs more air, thought Wanda. So she put down her school bag and began taking more of the trash out to the curb. Once I get all this trash out of here, nothing will block the air from getting to my rose bush, Wanda thought. Mr. Claudel was on his way home from work, saw Wanda trying to drag an old door, and stopped by to help. Cleaning up the neighborhood, are you, Wanda? He asked. No, just cleaning, Mr. Clottle, Wanda told him. I'm getting rid of this trash so my rose bush can get more air. A rose bush? Here? Mr. Clottle asked. And so Wanda showed him the rose bush. I don't know a bunch about gardening, Wanda, Mr. Clottle said, frowning, but I don't think that's a rose bush. Sure it is, said Wanda, and in a few weeks this lot will be filled with the sweetest smelling roses you ever saw. She thanked Mr. Clottle for his help and went off to drag away some more trash. Mr. Clottle shook his head. If that's a rose bush, he said to himself, then I'm the King of France. Again, do you think he says that I'm the King of France? That probably means that he is just in his dreams that would never happen in real life. They don't really think this rose bush is going to bloom, do they? Every day after school that week and the next, Wanda worked in the empty lot, and Mrs. Giamatti, who lived in the apartment next door, gave Wanda some trash bags for the old shoes, beer bottles, broken toys, and bits of glass that she was picking up. You've done a great job cleaning up this lot, Wanda, Mrs. Giamatti told her. Oh, I'm not just cleaning, Wanda said. I have to get rid of all this trash so my rose bush will get enough sun and fresh air to bloom. But where is your rose bush? Mrs. Giamatti asked. So Wanda showed her. There it is. Mrs. Giamatti put her hand on Wanda's shoulder and spoke softly to her. Wanda, she said, this is not a rose bush. Oh, but it is, said Wanda, and in a few weeks this lot will be filled with the most beautiful roses you have ever saw. And that will be nice, said Mrs. Giamatti, but I don't want you to be disappointed if the rose bush doesn't bloom. Don't worry, Mrs. Giamatti, Wanda answered. I won't be disappointed. Mrs. Giamatti sighed. That is not a rose bush and will never be one, she thought to herself. The next week, when the rose bush still wasn't blooming, Wanda talked to her school librarian. I need some books about getting roses to bloom, she told Miss Jones. Oh, do you have a rose bush, Wanda? Miss Jones asked. Yes, but it doesn't have flowers yet, and I know it has enough sun and fresh air. Does it have water? Miss Jones asked. Water, of course, Wanda said. That will make it bloom. Wanda is trying to solve her problem. Is it a good idea for her to go to the library? Do you think you could get books on flowers and how to make them grow? Yeah, I think that's a really smart idea. That afternoon, she hurried to the rose bush. It was still bare and thorny, and she looked at the ground and smiled. Don't worry, little bush, she said out loud. I'll get you some water, and then you'll be able to grow flowers. Wanda went to the butcher shop across the street. This man must be a butcher. Mr. Sanchez, would you please give me some water for my rose bush? Rose bush? Is that what I see you taking care of and talking to every day over there? Are you sure that's a rose bush, Wanda? Mr. Sanchez asked. Oh, yes, I'm sure, Wanda said, but it can't bloom because it needs water. Mr. Sanchez gave her water in a plastic bucket. Well, I hope that really is a rose bush, he said, looking at her doubtfully. You'll see, Wanda told him. In a few weeks, that whole lot will be full of roses. As Wanda carried the water to her rose bush, Mr. Sanchez muttered, in a few weeks, that thorn bush will still be a thorn bush. Every day Wanda ran to her rose bush after school, but every day it was still bare and thorny. She watered it, she sang to it, and checked its bare branches for roses. Mr. Clottle, on his way home from work, stopped to see if there were roses yet. Mrs. Turner, on her way to the butcher shop, stopped to see if there were any roses yet. Mrs. Giamatti, seeing Wanda in the lot, called down from her apartment to ask if there were any roses yet. When Wanda went to the library at school, Miss Jones asked if there were any roses yet. And every day, when Wanda went to the butcher shop for water, Mr. Sanchez asked if there were any roses yet. And to each person, Wanda would answer the same thing. Just you wait. Pretty soon this whole lot will be filled with roses. I see all of these neighbors that Wanda has. They are all asking about the rose bush. Why are they so interested in it? Do you think that they don't? I think they are worried that this little girl, Wanda, is going to have her feelings hurt and she'll be disappointed. And I don't think they want to do that to her, and they're worried about it. And then one day in June, Wanda had an idea. Looking at the bare thorny bush, she said, if my rose bush won't give roses to me, I'll just have to give roses to my rose bush. And when she saw Mrs. Turner, Mr. Claudel, Mrs. Giamatti, and Miss Jones, and Mr. Sanchez, she gave each of them an invitation that said, please, come for tea and muffins in Wanda's rose garden Saturday morning at 9. Oh dear, said Mrs. Turner, is she still expecting to get roses from that bush? Oh no, said Mr. Claudel, and she's worked so hard too. Oh my, said Mrs. Giamatti, she'll be so disappointed. Oh darn, said Mr. Sanchez, there must be something I can do. Oh good, said Miss Jones, who had only heard about the rose bush from Wanda and hadn't seen it for herself. And I'll bring the muffins. Most of these neighbors are all so worried about Wanda that she's going to be disappointed. What do you think is going to happen next? Is she going to be disappointed? Look. The night before the tea party, everyone was very busy, and the next morning at 9, everyone was surprised to see Wanda's rose bush covered with roses, paper roses, that Wanda had made herself and carefully tied to each bare thorny branch. But more surprising yet, everyone who came to the party had brought along a rose bush to plant near Wanda's, except Miss Jones, who had brought delicious blueberry muffins. Why do you think the neighbors all brought rose bushes to the tea party? I think they wanted to make her happy, didn't they? Look at what they did. They're planting these rose bushes. And how do they all look? Like they did this for Wanda, but it also made them very happy to do it for her, didn't they? After they had eaten the muffins and drunk their tea, they all got busy planting rose bushes. Mr. Claudel and Mrs. Turner dug the holes. Mrs. Giamatti held the bushes in place while Wanda and Miss Jones filled in around the roots with soil. Mr. Sanchez brought water from his shop and watered them thoroughly. And when the work was finished, Mr. Claudel said, Wanda, this is going to be a rose garden fit for a king. Or a queen, said Mrs. Turner, and Wanda and the others smiled. And later that summer, the whole lot was filled with the biggest, most beautiful, sweetest smelling roses that anyone had ever seen, just as Wanda had always said it would be. Wanda made the world more beautiful, their neighborhood, something that everyone could enjoy, didn't she? With the help of great neighbors. Now, if I look over here, friends, before the story, the empty lot was full of trash. And after, the empty corner was full of roses. Before, the bush was thorny and looked dead. After, the thorny bush had paper flowers. Before, no one liked it. After, everyone enjoyed it. Wanda, too, made this world more beautiful.